Hello, my name is Sophia O'Brien, and I'm a recent graduate from Anderson University with a license in elementary education and a minor in peace and conflict transformation. Throughout this video, I'm hoping to share with you what I know, believe, and do when it comes to my teaching philosophy and why I am a great addition to your school. The first thing I know is that learning and developmental patterns vary among individuals. I believe that this is shown through the Universal Design for Learning framework, and that in order for all students to be successful, I have to continuously cycle through the process of chunking the information I teach and then checking for understanding and using opportunities to respond. I have seen this while working at a Heart for Kids in Anderson, Indiana, an after-school program that works with students who are struggling academically, especially in reading. In this program, there are 1st through 4th graders who are developmentally at different stages, and because of this, they all learn in different ways. Continuing on, I also know that all learners bring unique individual differences to the learning process. Because of this, I believe that it is very important to implement culturally relevant pedagogy in the classroom and really get to know who our students are. While at a Heart for Kids, the students I worked with were from varying cultural and social economic backgrounds. Throughout my time there, I was able to create relationships with the students and understand how their background, home, and life experiences affect them in the classroom and into their future. One of the students I tutor has a very apathetic mentality towards me and the instruction. As a teacher, I know this apathy can be a product of trauma or adverse life experiences. I'm still working with that child to build a relationship and incorporate the things she enjoys in the instruction. These relationships I create with students are so important to have in order to create a better learning experience for them. Another thing I know is that learners need supportive and safe learning environments in order to thrive. I believe in order to do this, I have to collaborate with my learners and allow them to collaborate with each other. I also believe that through this collaboration, mutual respect and trust must be created in order for students to feel supported and safe. My minor in peace and conflict transformation has really prepared me to understand how to create safe environments for students. In one of my courses, I was able to learn about restorative justice practices and the use of talking circles to build trust and communication between teachers, students, and families. I also believe that well-established learning environments will allow for students to feel welcome and as though they belong. As a teacher, I want to create spaces in my classrooms that are for my students, and I want to have my students' work and projects all over the classroom so that they have a feeling of belonging. I know that also to be an effective teacher, I have to know the concepts I am teaching. I believe it is very important for teachers to know the content and continue to review and learn more in order to create meaningful lessons for students. There were many times in my educational practicums where I would have to go back and review the information before I taught my lesson. This way I could go into the classroom fully understanding the content knowledge I had to teach, which allowed me for a better lesson that fosters students' inquiry and understanding of concepts. I also know that to be an effective teacher, I have to connect the content I'm teaching and use differing perspectives to engage learners in critical thinking, creativity, and collaborative problem solving. I believe that chunking the content in bite-sized pieces, Bloom's taxonomy, and depths of knowledge are all ways to engage students in cross-disciplinary skills and differing perspectives. Going back to my practicums at AU, once I knew the content, I then had to connect it and teach it in a way that students understand. And that does not at all mean teaching it in one way. I had to create a lesson that encompassed many different ways of learning in order for all my students to grasp the knowledge. When I taught lessons, I would make sure that the content was divided into smaller pieces so that my students would not have to retain too much information all at once. I also know that to be an effective teacher, there has to be assessments and multiple forms. I believe that assessments are a good way to gather data for progress monitoring, know how well your students are understanding a concept, and also a good way to reflect on how well you taught your lessons and inform your instruction. Another practicum I had, I was able to do a one-on-one reading intervention with a student for 5 weeks. At the beginning of our time together, we did an initial assessment to understand where the student was at. Then every day there was informal assessments in the form of discussions, practice, and writing that allowed me to decide if I wanted to move on or if she would to continue to work on the current concept. At the end of our time together, I was able to give a final assessment that was much like the initial assessment. This allowed me to see the student's growth through the 5 weeks. I also know that data gathered from the assessments can be used to plan instruction that supports every student in meeting their learning goals. I believe that scaffolding the material is an important part of supporting students through instruction, and using checking for understanding and opportunities to respond to gather whole class data that I can use to plan my instruction. Going back to my one-on-one intervention, my data and information that I gathered every day from the student allowed me to plan instruction for the next day, whether it was reviewing the same concept again or moving on to a new one. I know that another part of being an effective teacher is to use a variety of instructional strategies that encourage learners to develop a deep understanding of content. I believe that cooperative learning groups, inquiry-based instruction, visualizations and graphics, technology in the classroom, and many more are all instructional strategies that will help and engage all learners. In all my practicums at AU and with all my students, I knew that I had to be creative and make learning fun. I was able to create games for students, foster hands-on learning, and even use technology to make the learning accessible for every student. In one of my practicums for 4th grade social studies, my co-teacher and I made a skit on explorers and settlers. Each student had a role, and as we read through the prompts, they were able to act out their parts, which created a fun, interactive experience that all students were engaged in. I also know that in order to be an effective teacher, I also have to continually engage in professional learning myself. I believe that this can be accomplished through basic reflection at the end of every teaching day, collaboration with colleagues and attending meetings, and even being part of professional growth opportunities. I personally had the opportunity to attend a symposium in Chicago on education equity, where I heard from the former Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. This symposium allowed me to learn more about my classroom, how I can make it better, and what I can do about the issues facing the education system. Lastly, I know that as a teacher, I have to seek appropriate leadership roles and opportunities to take responsibility for student learning. I believe that students do not leave everything outside the classroom door. Every experience and challenge in the student's life comes in the classroom and affects their learning, which means teachers also have to be advocates for the students in order to ensure the students are able to focus solely on their growth and learning. While I was at A Heart for Kids, we worked hand in hand with the school social workers and the student's family. If we noticed a reason outside the classroom that was causing the students to fall behind, we would advocate for that student and do what was necessary to ensure that their safety and growth. I am excited and passionate to work with every individual learner from varying backgrounds and to create an engaged classroom community full of trust, respect, and growth. I hope you will consider me for this position.